it was really just a frustrating night. I mean, it was eerily similar to the last time the Bucs played a game at home, not the preseason game, but the Rams game, where everything went wrong, and then you get down to the end, and the Bucs have a chance to win the game. You think, all right, I mean, they despite all the odds, they're going to pull even. They're going to send this game to overtime. They're going to win the game, and they came one play away from doing it. And the miscommunication, whatever happened there at the end with the delay of game penalty on the 2-point conversion, it cost them.
Yeah, I think if Mike Evans is there, if Chris Godwin's there, I think we're looking at a different game plan. They struggled at moving the ball on the ground, through the air. It was just the weapons that they have right now at their disposal. The offensive line, Robert Hainsey did some good things, Gedeke, but Brandon Walton, Josh Wells are just overmatched with some of these defenses that they're playing. They desperately need Donovan Smith back. They desperately need some of these weapons back. And kind of alarming was, they thought Julio Jones was ready to go. Julio Jones dealing with a partially torn PCL. They said that he could be ready to go, but they held him back because they want them healthy. And I think that's a decision that maybe kind of will haunt them looking back at this game, if this is the deciding factor of maybe a number 1 or number 2 seed down the line.
Yeah, I mean, you do wonder a little bit. I think I understand it. The idea of kind of it's week 3. We need Julio healthy for the long haul. That's probably their thinking behind it. Todd Bowles said after the game he thinks Julio should be ready to go next week. And I mean, obviously they get Mike Evans back next week. I don't think it's weird because it's 3 games now where they scored 1 offensive touchdown in each game. I don't think it's like dire straits. Like, I think this is that this offense has the talent. They have everything together. They just need to put it together.
Right.
A lot of time to do that.
Right. And I think next week against the Chiefs, a high-flying, high-powered offense, I think they'll be energized by the fact that they're probably getting Julio back. We know they're getting Mike Evans back. Donovan Smith might be someone who could come back as well. And Chris Godwin, his injury status is still up in the air. But, you bring these guys back into this offense, and I think it energizes it. And the best way for them to potentially get energized is the way we do it, and that's to drink a Celsius. Celsius is our sponsor here at Pewter Report. And what can we say about Celsius that you guys haven't already heard? I had 2 today.
I need a second one.
I need a second one right now too. But 7 essential vitamins to give you the energy you need on a daily basis. They have multiple different flavors. You're looking at some of them. Our favorite right here, the sparkling orange. This is what I had earlier today. Peach vibe, tropical vibe. They've got all the vibes now. They got the Arctic vibe, which is like a berry slushy. It's delicious.
I had an Arctic vibe this morning.
Yeah. Arctic. I had an Arctic vibe yesterday. So tropical vibe, peach vibe. And the best way to do it, if you haven't had a Celsius, go to your local bodega and go try one out, because they definitely are better than the other energy drinks out there. Sugar free, so there's no crash. And then if you like them and you want to buy them in bulk, the simplest way is just go to Amazon.
That's what I've done myself, and it'll last you a little bit, and man, it's great. I don't have a day go by where I don't have a Celsius. Start off my day with a Celsius. Just gets me through the day, and we appreciate them for being our presenting sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. And JC, I mean, where do we go from here? I think one of the big things early on in the game, it seemed like the Bucs could get some drives going. They get to third down, they couldn't do anything. I think they started 0 for 4 on third downs. They finished, I think they finished 2 of 11 on third downs.
It's been a problem.
It has been. And defensively, they came in as one of I think it was actually these 2 teams were tied for the second best in the league against on third downs. And I mean, the Bucs early on, I think the Packers started 4 for 4 on third down, and it looked like what happened to the Bucs defense in the first 2 weeks.
Right.
And after that, they shut them down. They started 4 for 4. The Packers finished 6 for 15 on third down. So, I mean, a little bit, obviously a better clip than 2 for 11. But overall, I mean, it's funny. You talk to some of the players in the locker room after the game, and they're frustrated with not with the offense. They're frustrated with the fact that they gave up 2 touchdowns. They're frustrated with the fact that they got off to a rough start. And so that's something that they've set a standard for themselves that they really just want to come back. And next week, I mean, it's a tough opponent. You got Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense, but they are going to want to start fast next week and kind of get over that hump of the first 3 games now, starting slow on the first drive. And this, today's second drive and first drive, it cost them.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing that was, repeated over and over was that slow start. This Bucs team has given up points early in games, and they've given up rushing yards early in games, and that's something that they need to turn around. Quite frankly, throughout the game, and especially in the second half, they've been a force.
Yeah.
Two turnovers tonight. They've been limiting the run when teams are trying to run, especially if they have the lead. The Packers are trying to get the run going. They have the lead to milk out that clock, and the Bucs just said, I'm not letting them do it. And I'm sure some of them are. They won't say it publicly, but the defense has been carrying the weight. They've only let up 27 points all year. 27 points all year in 3 games. And the offense just hasn't done enough. They've done enough in 2 games, barely, and they just fall short 2 points shy on that 2-point conversion attempt this week. And it's got to frustrate them as well. They won't say it publicly, but to go out there and continue to execute, to shut other teams down, get the ball back, get them great field position, it's something that the offense needs to turn around ASAP. And it's going to specifically have to do it next week against the Chiefs team that can pretty much move the ball at will when they want to.
Yeah, and defensively, it's one of those things where they're frustrated with themselves. Offensively, they understand. They know, obviously, they're not playing well.
Right.
Cameron Brate, after the game, was saying that it is frustrating. They know they have the talent. And they know they can put it all together. They've done it before, but it's just a matter of getting it all to gel. Of course, getting guys back will help. Getting Mike Evans back next week will help. Getting Julio back will help. Donovan Smith is one that they really they need to get back. It's one of those things that we know how tough Donovan Smith is. He's one of the toughest guys out there, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him back next week. I know he was trending toward. He participated in practice in a limited capacity on Thursday, so trending in the right direction. We'll see how this week gets all affected with the hurricane and whatever's happening with the weather. Bucs are talking about what their plans are for that. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's disheartening to watch that, but it's early in the season. It's week 3, right? I mean, if they're 2-1, you have the first 4 games come out on the schedule, and you're like, those are a tough 4 first opponents.
Right.
And you're at 2-1, a chance to go 3-1 through the first 4 before things lighten up a little bit with Atlanta the following week.
Right, and I think if once they get all the weapons back, you look at 19 points against the Cowboys. That should have been an absolute blowout.
Yeah.
Week 2 there was opportunities that they missed, penalties, self-inflicting penalties, mental mistakes, turnovers, self-inflicting penalties. It was just played this offense, and then you look at this game as well. I mean, you had Rashad Perriman fumble, close to the red zone. You had another Russell Gage fumble on a drive that looked really promising.
Yeah.
And then, for whatever reason, they finally go to the no huddle quick attack and down the line to tie up the game or potentially tie up the game, and that worked. And I'd like to see some of that more often. Again, I mean, I know I'm not the only one that's getting frustrated with these runs on first down. It's repetitive and it puts you in a hole. I know I asked Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles about that today, and he's like, we threw the ball that came out, but then it was more of their running. I mean, on 3 straight plays they ran. No, they got the first down barely, but I get they're trying to keep defense balance, off balance and have a balanced attack themselves. But at some point, you've got to let Brady cook.
Yeah.
He's the best the best there ever is.
Yeah, and it was just a weird flow of the game, and the fact that the Packers had those 2 early drives, touchdown drives, were long drives, kept the Bucs offense off the field, and the Bucs came back out, and early on they couldn't get anything going much. They were going 3-and-out. Penalties were setting them back. It was the first down penalty, made it 1st and 20. Stuff like that just kept happening, and then finally when they did get those drives going, it was the fumble. It was another fumble, and then late in the game, it was the 4th quarter. They have one of the best plays of the game is Brady hits Jalen Darden for a 25-yard gain to the 50-yard line, and then whatever we saw on that double reverse attempt, the ball gets fumbled, the Bucs lose 12 yards. You're facing 2nd and 22, Brady's sacked, 3rd and 30, and what's your play call on 3rd and 30?
I don't. They got 12 of it back, so it was only a 4th and 18. I mean, that's been a huge issue. There's no way to sugarcoat it. It's play calling. There's been some real question marks there. I don't think you're utilizing your best player's strengths in the effort to be multiple, as they say, in order to be balanced. And I think, of course, hopefully Julio's back next week. Mike Evans is back next week. We'll see about Godwin and Smith. But once those guys come back, you have to switch it up because what you've done the first 3 games hasn't worked offensively. Yeah. You've got to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, we want to get the running game going, but how can we get the running game going? Or how can we utilize the passing game to get the running game going? We didn't see it until later in the game, but they started utilizing Leonard Fournette more in the passing game. And I think that's something that this offensive missed. Remember, Leonard Fournette was 3rd on the team in receptions last year.
Yeah.
And he's he's not been a big factor until tonight. You saw him at 6 targets, 5 receptions for 35 yards. That's the most that we've seen out of him in the passing game those first 3 weeks. So if you want to get the running game, there's other ways than just running the ball, and especially running it on first down, and then putting yourself into situations where now it's 2nd and long, 3rd and long. And especially when you're having trouble converting on 3rd downs.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where their 3rd down struggles can often be attributed to their struggles on 1st down.
Right.
And we talked about it all week, and I think we've talked about it all season. That's a lot of the issue there. And so, like you said, there's a way to run the ball, establish the run. And if that's something that the Bucs are focused on this year, being their philosophy, so that kind of a shift from Bruce Arians and throwing the ball downfield so much, is just do it in a way that's not so predictable. I think that's the big issue and the big challenge right now for this Bucs offense. And like you said, with Leonard Fournette in the passing game, something I talked to John Gilmore about on our Pewter Tailgate show this morning. And I was saying, first 2 games, Leonard had 2 catches in those 2 games.
That's right.
I was happy to see him get a little bit more in the passing game tonight, because that was something that I think he won them a couple games last year.
Absolutely.
That Philadelphia game, I think maybe it was also the New England game.
Yeah, it was just kind of street ball.
Yeah, it was multiple where it
go
was,
to the Buick.
Yeah, throw the ball to Fournette. I think he would finish with over 100 combined yards, and he was just moving the chains, and that's what they were able to do. And that's something that the Bucs have struggled to do. Obviously, getting in those 3rd and long situations, you're already putting yourself in a hole. You're up against it on 3rd and long, and that's why if you can't get to that 3rd and 4, like a dump off to Leonard Fournette's great on 3rd and 4, but you can't do that on 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 if you're not getting anything on 1st and 2nd down.
Right, it becomes difficult. And you look at what Leonard Fournette had. He didn't have amazing rushing numbers, only 35 yards on 12 attempts, 2.9 average, which is not good at all.
Yeah.
But you had in those 5 catches for 35 yards. Now he's got 70 yards from scrimmage. You're supplementing the way you're using him, not only as a designated runner, but as a guy who can catch things out of the backfield and turn upfield and make plays, because one of those runs were 17 yards. So he's a playmaker that I feel like they're underutilizing, especially with all the injuries. I mean, that's the biggest thing. They've got all these injuries, and they're barely utilizing him. They're not utilizing Rachaad White as much. I'd like to see – we saw a look in the Dallas game where they were both in the backfield. I'd like to see that happen a little bit more. But I think there's definitely some wrinkles that this offense can do to spark some life into it, and I didn't see that this week.
Yeah.
And in a game where you needed that, I thought that was a big issue in play calling by Byron Leftwich.
Yeah, and I thought that was the weird thing was just with so many injuries, you kind of thought, all right, they need to be a little creative. They need to do some different things, and I don't think the Bucs did much different on this week 3 game at all. I think it was more of the same. And I mean, Todd Bowles said after the game was like it wasn't a talent thing. He didn't want to blame the fact they don't have their top guys. It's not a talent thing. It's an execution thing. Tom Brady talked a lot about how they just didn't execute. The defense is playing great. The offense isn't executing, and it's costing them.
That goes hand in hand with talent, though.
Yeah.
I mean, certain players can execute better than other players because of the talent level. And right now the Bucs are playing, and that's not a knock on Scotty. These are NFL players. There's only 1,500 of them, 1,800 of them in the world, like that are on roster. So these guys are definitely skilled athletes, but the Bucs have assembled a cream of the crop. They've got Mike Evans and Julio Jones, which are 2 potential Hall of Famers, and Chris Godwin, who's
another elite receiver.
An elite receiver, and they're just not utilizing him correctly. They did have, though, some plays drawn up for their newest guy, Cole Beasley. He came in and he had 3 catches for, I want to say 12 yards, targeted 4 times. And he, I don't know if I was super overly impressed with him. I thought he had some good plays. But again, it's hard to make that distinguish because he's brand new.
Yeah, it's three practices.
He's 3 practices in, but I think he could be a good addition to the team.
Yeah, I didn't expect a ton. I think I kind of saw a little bit to an extent what I expected. Just kind of that outlet guy. I think he had a first down on the early 4th and 1 on the first drive. Help move the chains. And he's that kind of guy where he's gonna catch the ball over the middle and catch it in space, get you those first downs. And I think we'll see more of him. I think especially with the way these injuries have gone, it's been a struggle for the Bucs. And I think the more he gets with the offense, I mean, again, it's been 3 days, been 4 days. And this, the fact that he was even active today was just out of necessity. I mean, they're that banged up at the receiver position. And it's so funny to go back to the offseason. I don't know if it's funny, But to go back to the offseason and how much talent they assembled at the wide receiver position to guard against what happened last year.
Right.
And just I don't know how this keeps happening where it's just such a wave of it gets to that point where they're already down 4 receivers. I mean, three or four. Russell Gage, had a better game today. He had that fumble that was really costly, and Todd Bowles wasn't happy with it. But on 13 targets, caught the ball 12 times for 87 yards, had that touchdown there at the end. He's been playing banged up himself. He's been playing with a hamstring issue since training camp. And so it's one of those things where you've got your top 4 guys. Of course, Mike was suspended today, but your top 4 guys out in game 3 of the season. It's a tough position to be in. So that's why Cole Beasley, they needed him today.
Right. And we got a super chat from Marquise Davis, and he says, $5, thank you very much, Marquise. Appreciate it. He says, our receivers are killing us. And again, tight end production is bad. Do we trade for a tight end? I don't know if it's panic time yet. I mean, we're only 3 games in, and I feel like, this should have been a game they won. You saw what the defense did to Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, holding the running game to 67 yards, holding the passing game. I mean, Brady outpassed Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it was not by much, but 271 to 255. The difference was sacks and obviously one more touchdown.
Yeah.
But I don't think that it's time to panic as far as the wide receivers go.
Just gotta get healthy.
Gotta get healthy.
That's what it is.
That's it. And you gotta get Mike back. If Mike did not do what he did, or the league looked at it a different way, and he was not suspended, we're talking about a Bucs win. I'm so sure of it. That 2-point conversion. There was another time when they were down in the red zone.
I don't even think they get to that situation at the end of the game with on the field.
Right.
I think it's I don't know a comfortable win, but it's one that you're not having to throw up a 2-point conversion to just get the tie and send it to overtime.
Well, right. Because they also lost Jair Alexander, their best cornerback. So now you take away
early in the game. Too.
Early in the game, yeah. So now you take away their best cornerback that's going to be covering Mike for the most part. I just think that it's not panic time. It's not trade for anyone time. You brought in Cole Beasley, and I think that I don't want to call that a panic move, but that was more of a move where you look at it like, okay, maybe the younger guys that we have on this roster isn't going to get the job done. Let's bring in a veteran guy who's known for going across the middle, a good slot receiver, and someone that obviously, as he said, he's been in Brady's DMs for a while, and Brady finally checked them, opened them up, and answered them. And, I think he'll be a solid addition and gives you really, a really still deep wide receiver room when everyone's healthy. That's just been the issue. So I don't think it's panic time. I will say I don't think it's panic time for this group either, but we've got to see better offensive line play.
We do, yeah.
It's
weird too because it's the thing we can keep saying is early. You can only say it's early for so long. I mean, it is early because it's week 3, and this is a unit that is without Donovan Smith right now, and that's something they weren't anticipating, of course. And of course, they weren't anticipating being down to their 3rd left tackle either. Even if for some reason they thought, okay, well, if Donnie's out, you got Josh Wells as the backup. They're both out. That's not a situation that you can really foresee happening. But with the guys like Robert Hainsey stepping in for Ryan Jensen, I haven't had a lot of problems with Hainsey so far this season. Gedecke's taking his lumps. I think as a rookie, he's 3 games in. You can only do so much. And I think it's one of those things where they just need to continue to get better week by week. And the big thing is just kind of missed me. There was the one Brandon Walton sack he allowed where it just was a bad anticipation play. I feel like he was in position, but he wasn't waiting for the move. Like he made the defender made the move, I don't remember who it was. Made the move for the sack, and he was just late. He was just late to get to him. So it was one of those things where it's
and he had the holding call too.
Yeah, on Brady had an 18-yard scramble, and it comes back on a holding call. You can say, the 18-yard scramble doesn't happen without the hold potentially, but man, what was it? Watching Brady run 18 yards on the field, he said after the game, Brady had a little bit of he was in a Brady mood, I think, after the game,
but still, not a Brady mood.
Yeah, because he was still kind of willing to talk a little bit more, and honestly, I think talk more than he did last week after beating the Saints.
Right? Yeah. It was longer for sure.
And then of course they asked him about the 18-yard run, and he has the jokes that he brings. He said he saw a whole lot of green grass and no Packers, and no one turns an 18-yard or 40-yard gain into an 18-yard gain quite like him. And of course, he busted his knee brace on that play, and it was another example of the Bucs getting something going offensively, something positive happening, and then a drawback, just something it shoots himself right in the foot right away. Like they couldn't sustain that throughout the game.
Well, I just want to see a little bit more push. These younger guys are supposed to, be still learning pass protection and improving at pass protection and be better in the running game. I just want to see a little bit more push from the running game. I know, these last 2 weeks they've been going up against some of the best run defenses with Anyamata and with Kenny Clark, and they'll be facing Chris Jones. But you look at what they were able to do, and it's what we've been talking about, right, guys? That Dallas game was not exactly what to expect from the running game because of the guys there, and it doesn't get any easier. They have after the Chiefs, they have the Falcons and Grady Jarrett and Marlon Davidson, and then you go up to Pittsburgh and Carolina with Derek Brown, and so they need to improve in the running game. They need to improve in the passing game. They need to do it quickly because it doesn't get easier for them at all. And then they're facing the Ravens, so we're going to send different multiple looks actually up the middle.
What's so interesting to me about this offensive line is early on, I think it was a lot of with the running game. It was like, okay, this is what they're good at, so we're going to run the ball more, keep them a little more comfortable, not ask them to do a ton in pass protection. I think honestly, it was a little different today. I don't think they were so great today in pass protection, but the first two games, they impressed me in the way they were able to protect Tom Brady. I think it's one of those things that you have to strike that right balance, and I think they're going to improve. I think they're going to get better in both pass protection and run blocking, but it's got to come week by week. You got to see that growth each week, and I think today was a setback. I think Green Bay's got a pretty tough front, but you got to be able to handle and roll with the punches. And there were good reps, there were bad reps, but overall I think you need to see better play from the offensive line. You're right, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, and we saw one guy too make his season debut there. Was Kyle Rudolph. Didn't do much though. I mean, he was only targeted once. He caught his lone reception for 12 yards, and that was kind of it. He was an afterthought after that. And I don't know about you, but I don't necessarily know if that bodes well for his future on the team. There, Gronk was here at the stadium, and there were some reports here that kind of came out that there's just some whispers through the building that there's been some discussions possibly, but there's a little sensitivity around the whole Kyle Rudolph Gronk situation. So I don't know if you buy into that, if there's much to read into that, but
I wouldn't expect it. Is what I'd say. Kyle
Rudolph is definitely a guy who I don't think is going to continue to be active on game days. Let me just say that.
Yeah, I think out of it was out of the situation today. I think normally Kate Otten would have been active. Kyle Rudolph probably would have been inactive again, and you would have seen more of Otten and Keith. I think what's interesting is I've liked what I've seen so far from the rookie tight ends, especially in terms of blocking. I think Otten's going to be a good pass catching option down the road. Week by week, I think he'll get better. I haven't seen a ton out of Cameron Brate. We saw a little bit more against the Packers. Saw a little bit more against the Packers tonight, but not as much as we've seen, because Brate's a guy that Brady trusts. He's through 3 years now. He's been one of those guys that he goes to, and we've seen it a lot of times. You've seen it in training camp, and it's a guy we made the jokes too about Blaine Gabbert. It's one of those things where there's Brate over the middle. Get the ball to Brate, and I think that's something that you might see more going forward. But overall, it's a stark difference to go from this team has Rob Gronkowski for 2 years, and then you're getting nothing out of the tight ends.
Right, exactly, and it's so weird too, especially like in the red zone situation. You'd think that these guys would be more of a presence, and Cam Brate did kind of come alive. Later in the game, he had 5 receptions, 52 yards, was targeted 6 times. He had that big long one for 19 yards. So they're just not. And then again, if you go back before Gronk, this offensive scheme has never really featured tight ends. Yeah. They're usually there to be seen and not heard as blockers. And I think that's why they target a guy like Kate Otten and a guy like Ko Keith, because those are their roles, blocking tight ends. So and obviously Kate Otten has hands. He's a wide guy too. So I don't know if we should expect to see more of these tight ends in the coming weeks, unless the injuries continue to stay where they're at. I think the onus is going to be to get the ball to the wide receivers and to still set the run up and continue to running the ball, which is going to be, I think it's going to be a process and experiment that we're not going to stop talking about all season long, in order to kind of keep balance and be multiple on the offense when you've got the best asset in the league, and that's Tom Brady, and you surrounded him with weapons for a reason. let them rip the ball. I want to see more 2-minute. I want to see more in the hurry up, no huddle, because you saw how effective that was. Why they waited until literally the 2-minute drill to do the 2-minute offense was beyond me, when they could clearly see things weren't working.
Even at the end of the first half, that was kind of some of the best that the offense looked outside of the first drive. They had a pretty good first drive, but they started going up tempo a little bit, and they were kind of catching the Packers on their heels. They were getting some gains. I think they had like 4 or 5 quick passes in a row, and they were getting back to the line, and then it just ended with the fumble. But they were moving the ball more, and it was a clear sign of improvement at that point in the game. And then, of course, the last drive, it's one of those where it just everything started to go right. It was like you just felt like, okay, I mean, Tom Brady.
If there was 10 more minutes in that game, I think we'd be talking about a different outcome.
Well, I mean, especially with the way the defense was playing.
There's 5 more minutes, maybe.
Yeah, I think we got to go back to what the defense did, because that whole second half, they shut down Aaron Rodgers. They shut down the Packers offense. I know they didn't have, they don't have Devontae Adams anymore. It's not like the Packers offense of old, but it's still Aaron Rodgers, still a really, really good quarterback, one of the best of all time. And he wasn't doing much in the second half. The defense was taking the ball away. They had the interception by Logan Ryan. The defense even kept this from being a game that got out of hand early on, because it was 14-3. Offense wasn't moving. The defense, even on the third drive the Packers had, I think it was the third or fourth, they get down inside the 5-yard line. Aaron Jones catches the ball near the goal line, and then it was big Vita, and I think Levante David was on the tackle too, forcing the fumble. Was it Logan Ryan on the recovery too?
Yeah, Logan Ryan on the recovery.
Logan Ryan has played a hand in 3 turnovers in the last 2 weeks. You're seeing a lot out of Logan Ryan.
Right.
And I think it's just those first 2 drives are what the defense is going to focus on, because they think their standard is we can shut everybody down. But when you look at this body of work over 3 games, this is a defense that deserves to be 3-0.
Absolutely. I mean, they played their mind out, and it's been a lot of fun to watch them just shut down offenses. And they have another big test next week to shut down another offense in the Kansas City Chiefs. They don't have Tyreek Hill, but this is still a dangerous offense. They did fall to the Colts today in a surprising game. But we'll be live at Walk-Ons next week for the live Pewter Tailgate Show down in Midtown. The show kicks off at 6:30. So make sure you guys get over to if you're in the Tampa area, make sure you get over to Walk-Ons. 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, we'll start our live tailgate show. And then right at 8:20 when the game kicks off, we'll switch over to live in-game analysis for the Bucs' second home game and their second Sunday night game against the Chiefs and that high-powered offense. And this defense, let's talk about this defense now, because this defense was absolutely stellar in the second half. I mean, if you looked at it, 7 drives, gave up 1 first down. It was a punt, interception, punt.
Yeah.
Like, they were just on point in that second half. And, they really set out to accomplish what they wanted to do, which is shut the run down with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon and Aaron Rodgers totaling just 67 yards in the ground.
And I think, too, what was interesting about what the Bucs were doing, I have to go back and kind of watch this game and reanalyze it, but it seemed like they were getting home with 4 a lot. They were putting a lot of pressure on Rodgers with that front 4. That's something I asked Joe Tryon-Schwenka about after the game, and just, of course, with as talented as the secondary is, with as well as they've been playing, if you can get home with 4 and give them a chance to make plays on the ball, I mean, it's going to make for what you've seen so far with this Bucs defense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that allows you to do so much too, because the cornerbacks have been great.
Yeah.
The secondary has been great. So if you're getting pressure with your 4 and you've got good coverage, there's bound to be mistakes, bound to be interceptions and fumbles and all sorts of turnovers caused, and we've seen that. We saw that by that Logan Ryan interception. That was a forced ball. That was not supposed to go directly to Logan Ryan, and part of that was pressure. And they got after him, and Logan Hall had his first career sack. Today was the only sack of the game on Aaron Rodgers, and the Bucs didn't get to him as much as they wanted to. And earlier in the game, I felt they were sending more than 4 earlier in the game and trying to get after him and make mistakes, play blitzes and stuff like that. But
Rodgers was taking it. He was picking him apart at that point. That was when he was able to hit those quick throws to Cobb, to Lazard. He hit
the dinking and dunks.
Yeah, it was early on. That's what the Packers were able to take advantage of.
Right, and that's what I talked to Will Golston afterwards, and he said that early on they were dinking and dunking, and we had to adjust. They did everything that we thought they would come to our game plan, and once we took that away, then we were able to play our game. And boy, did they play their game. I mean, you look at what they're able to do on the defense. It was just, the forced fumble between I don't even know who got that yet.
I think they credit it to Vita. I heard someone told me on the broadcast, and my dad told me on the broadcast. Originally, they credited it to Nacho, and then Levante David was in there as well.
It was a sandwich. It was Aaron Jones sandwich. Aaron Jones does not like to run against his team. He certainly doesn't like to get hit, because you look at the last 2 times he's done it. Jordan Whitehead.
He was probably feeling pretty good. He's like, Jordan Whitehead's not here anymore. I'm all right.
But. Nope. He gets slapped again. And, another guy who had a really quietly good game, he had the pick 6 last week, was Mike Edwards.
I've been so impressed with Mike Edwards this year.
He was so good. 13 total tackles, a tackle for a loss. And he was giving some hits, too. He was walloping people. If you look at this secondary, and the 3 tight end system that Bulls is running is just, I don't have it's so effective, and you're seeing the guys just make every week. It's a different guy making a play, and Jamel Dean almost had an interception if it wasn't for a penalty call, late substitution penalty called back. But you looked at week 1, Antoine Winfield Jr. had the interception. Week 2, Mike Edwards had the pick 6. Week 3. And Logan Ryan had the fumble recovery week 2. So week 3, Logan Ryan with a fumble recovery and an interception. That 3 safety look has been so instrumental to the Bucs defensive success, in my eyes. I think it's been just a catapult to where they are right now.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think what's been interesting is we haven't seen as much of Keanu Neal as I expected to.
Right.
So not quite giving the looks that we might have expected coming into the season. Keanu Neal did lay the lumber on that one hit on it was on a punt return. They ended up doing the re-kick. So I bet I think it was Amari Rodgers on the punt return. Probably not very happy he had to go back out there after that, taking that hit to the sideline. But yeah, I'm curious to see what going forward, what we see out of Keanu Neal. But yeah, like that, those 3 safeties, when you can get Logan Ryan, you can get Mike Edwards on the field at the same time, and of course Antoine Winfield Jr. When you can get all those guys on the field at the same time playing at a high level, it's hard to beat that team.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I don't know, Logan Ryan's in here on the veterans minimum benefit too. I mean, he's getting paid right now by the Giants. He's in the veterans minimum benefit. And I don't know what's going on, what he's doing, or what he's been doing. Has it been the TB12 method? Or maybe has it just been age rejuvenation?
At age rejuvenation, we have a lot of interest about erectile dysfunction in men.
It's not like my sex life was dormant, but you can always improve.
I was having an adverse effect on my marriage and was very happy with the results.
We have various treatment programs available to enhance their physical abilities that can improve blood flow and sensitivity.
The Pulse Wave has made it so much better.
It's been a significant improvement. The good news was that I heard it from my wife.
Stop waiting. Start doing Age Rejuvenation.
Guys, if you want to feel better, go to Age Rejuvenation. Lose weight, feel great, have better sex. You might have seen Age Rejuvenation as a new sponsor of SR's Fab 5 column on pewterreport.com on Fridays. Well, Scott Reynolds is an Age Rejuvenation customer too. Scott turned 50 this year and noticed that his energy had become a problem. Turns out he had low testosterone, like most men in their 40s and 50s. It's just nature, fellas. Low testosterone affects everything from weight loss to energy to stamina, but now there's a way to fight it, and that's what Scott did with testosterone therapy. Now he has more energy. Visit agerejuvenation.com. Age Rejuvenation has 5 Tampa Bay area locations to serve you. Lose weight, feel great, and have better sex with Age Rejuvenation.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if that's what Logan Ryan's doing, but he's rejuvenated his career so far in these last couple of games, especially these last 2 games. We haven't seen the playmaking ability like this with the Giants the last couple of years, and I think he's been such an instrumental part. And, I mean, we talk about Mike Edwards, but we've seen it, down in the line of scrimmage, playing deep, playing the nickel position, acting as another linebacker on the field. These 3 safeties can do all of it and are so versatile and interchangeable. It really gives them freedom to do so much.
Well, that was one of those things, too, coming into the season. Mike Edwards has been a guy that's been a rotational guy his whole career, and he's been a ball hawk. We knew Mike Edwards was a ball hawk. He makes plays on the ball. But with Jordan Whitehead leaving, you kind of thought, all right, how can he do as a run defender?
Right.
He's going to come in and step up and be a starting safety. He's got to be able to play the run as well. He's done it well.
Phenomenal.
He's done it
Tackle
well.
for a loss today.
Yeah, he's done it really well. I think Mike Edwards' his trajectory is only going up. might present by the end of the season with the way he's playing, with the way Jamel Dean is playing, might present them with a little bit of a problem as far as seeing who they can keep around longer term. But with the way they're playing right now, I think the sky is continuing to be the limit for this defense. The offense, when the offense figures it out, and I think it is more of a win rather than an if,
right?
Because they just got to get some guys healthy. They've got to. I think they need to change some process things. I think they need to kind of tweak some of the way they're running things, but it just makes such a difference when you have Mike Evans out there, when you have Chris Godwin healthy, and when you have Julio Jones out there, if he can stay healthy, it's going to make a difference. So if this offense can get up, like we were talking about earlier, if this offense can get up to speed, not even necessarily at the levels it was the last 2 years. I don't think it needs to be scoring 30 points per game and just throwing and running up the total yards to 500. I think they need to do more. Very clearly, they need to do more.
Absolutely.
But the defense is going to put them in position to win a lot of games.
100%. They definitely need to be able to do more as an offense and put them in an advantageous position to allow the defense to continue to play as well as they have been. And if you look at what the secondary has been able to do, Carlton Davis quietly had a forced fumble today as well.
Yeah.
Like they've been just making turnovers. They're way up in the turnover ratio right now, and they've been able to get after the quarterback, and they've been able to get after the quarterback in a variety of different ways. And part of that's because the coverage has been so good. And you look at today, we mentioned Logan Hall had his first career sack today, but that wasn't it. I mean, he also had a tackle for a loss. He had 3 quarterback hits.
He was getting after Aaron Rodgers.
He was,
and it was paramount for that to happen because Akeem Hicks being out, you needed to see more from Nacho. You needed to see more from the rookie Logan Hall, and Logan Hall paid it off. And Todd Bowles said after the game, he just was asked what he saw from Logan Hall in this game, and he just kind of said, "We saw what we drafted him for. Right. The things that we saw on tape and the reasons we drafted him. That's what we saw." And for that to come in week 3, I think it says a lot about him as a player. I think Will Golson was very complimentary of him. I mean, all off season, but especially after tonight's game. And a little bit too to get that first sack out of the way, especially to have it on Aaron Rodgers, a legendary quarterback. Right. But I wonder if you kind of start to see those coming in waves now. You got his first sack out of the way. He's getting pressure on the quarterback. Right.
Once you get that first, all right, I can do it. Aaron Rodgers, that's like a big thing. He was stoked about that. Talking to him, and they were getting after him too. They only got him down one time, but they were getting after him. Will Golson had a play where it was just this close again, but he still drove him into the dirt over here in the backed up against their own end zone. And it was he said it, having a guy like Logan Hall who's got the same size as him, that quick twitch ability, he's got that pass rushing expertise and is able to get that. He just adds a different versatile piece to that defensive line, which has got, there's so many different guys on there that can do so much.
I think we saw more out of Vita today too.
Yes.
And it's a defensive line that Rodgers is one of those quarterbacks who's tough. He was thrown out of sacks. Like he was almost wrapped up multiple times. We were just like, how did he get the ball?
Those shovel passes.
Yeah, how did he get that? He's just a smart quarterback and he can do that. It's going to be a different challenge, I think, next week when the Bucs play the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, because he's a guy that can get out of the pocket, make plays with his legs, throw on the run, complete all kinds of crazy plays. And we saw it in the Super Bowl. The Bucs were getting after him constantly, and he was still somehow getting throws off, almost completing passes. Had some passes in that game just flat out dropped.
Right.
It would have been a closer game, I think. So he's one of those quarterbacks that's tough to bring down, tough to get after him. And talking to some of the players after the game, it was Joe Tryon-Shoyinka saying they just got to contain him. They got to keep him in the pocket because he's going to try to hurt you. And it's going to be interesting to see how the defense handles that aspect of it, to continue this run they're on.
Right, absolutely. And if you look at the play of the linebacker, Levante David, obviously, was it his first fumble? Was it Vita Vea's first fumble? He's still one of those guys that is just a pretty much a tight end eraser. He had really good coverage. Him and Devin White had really good coverage on him. They made a few plays, but nothing that was too egregious in the end. And I don't think you can point to this defense and say, even though they let up the 14 points, and say that.
I mean, you just say that sentence like, "Oh, they let up the 14 points."
Right. So Aaron Rodgers, and say this is the reason why the Bucs lost. I think if you're going to point to anywhere, it's got to be the offensive side of the ball, and say, they've got to get it together. And again, it's so difficult because you can't make excuses for teams, right? You're an NFL team.
Yeah.
You have NFL players. You have to go out there and you have to execute no matter who's. Every team deals with injuries. Every team deals with situations that come up and arise. But
That's it. Yeah.
But with this Bucs team, they've gathered a really. I mean, look at the guys that they've brought in. Look at they're like Jason Lance, like Thanos trying to collect Infinity Stones. Except these guys are trying to collect rings or whatever, and he's trying to collect all the stones to put them in the rings for them. It's crazy, and they have to be able to go out there and execute the plays that are called. Now, I mean, again, we can get back on the play calling aspect of it, but they've got to be able to execute. And there were several drops. There were several plays that just were not executed properly by, either wide receivers, by offensive linemen. And that was the biggest holdup. That was the biggest situation on why this team didn't win. And I think that needs to turn around, and I think they can turn it around. They've got another week to prepare. I guess a couple extra hours to prepare too, because it's a Sunday night football game.
Yeah.
And we'll see how that translates.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think it's one of those things where you don't want to get too down about a 2-point loss in week 3. There's a lot to fix. There's a lot for this team to fix. There's a lot that they're doing well, and I think it's one of those things where it's a long season. They've got a lot of games left. It's really about getting to the playoffs, of course, and we saw it. I think in 2020. The Bucs didn't play their best football early in the regular season, but they got hot at the end. They got to the playoffs and they took care of business. You always want to set yourself up for that situation where you can play your games at home in the playoffs, but it's just one of the things where you got to stay as healthy as you can. You've got to play as well as you can, process-wise, execution-wise, and the rest, I think, will take care of itself. It's one of those things where you don't want to, the sky isn't falling in week 3.
No, not at all.
Especially after 2 wins to start.
Right. 2 road wins.
If they were 1-2 or 0-3, you might be like, okay, something's going on here. But I think there's fixable things within what they're doing that can get them right back on the right track.
Right, and there are 2 road wins that they 2-1. They were 7-1 at home last year. They still made it all the way to the divisional round, 1 play away pretty much from potentially going to the NFC Championship or hosting the NFC Championship, really. So, I'm not worried. I think it's going to, the one thing I will say against this matchup coming up with Kansas City is not only is there some, mystery around who's going to, we know Evans will be back, but who's going to be ready to play as far as Julio Jones, Bowles expects him to, but setbacks can happen. Yeah. Same thing with Davis, maybe Godwin, but they're going to be at a disadvantage. The Bucs are clearly going to be at a disadvantage this week, even though they're playing at home. And that's one time where it's weird that them playing at home is going to be a disadvantage, or could be a disadvantage, because of the hurricane coming into town. So we're not sure what the practice schedule is going to be like. But normally they'd have practice on Wednesday. Tuesday is a player's day off. Normally they have practice on Wednesday, but with the hurricane expected to possibly come into town on Wednesday, we'll see if they shift. I know Pewter Report, we're shifting. We're doing our podcast Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday this week. So make sure you set your alarms and set your reminders for that because of Wednesday. And the potential landfall of this hurricane. And we're going to monitor it. They're going to monitor it. But, Kansas City's not dealing with the hurricane. Yeah. So if the Bucs lose a day of practice or whatever.
Only way it affects Kansas City if somehow it gets pushed back and their flight schedule changes or something's changed with their process. But other than that, I mean, they'll fly in on Saturday and play again Sunday. So it could affect the Bucs. We don't really know. I think Todd Bowles said they've had conversations already about maybe what's going to happen. He said he'll know more tomorrow about how they're going to handle the situation. I think obviously as time passes, tracks change, paths change. They could have more information on where this thing is headed. It's just something to keep an eye on how they're affected this week with this impending weather.
Right, exactly. So I mean, we're gonna monitor that and see what happens, because I think even though Patrick Mahomes and he lost Tyreek Hill, right? There's no way around it. But he's got some other players there, and he's a special guy. I think if the Bucs get their offensive pieces back, this defense is going to continue to play the way they are. I don't think this defense drops off because they're playing a guy like Patrick Mahomes. I just don't. I don't see a complete 360, 180, or 180 rather, on this defensive play. Sure, they might let up a few more plays to a dynamic, but it's another guy that that Bulls has pretty much had, a good thumb on.
Outside of that first half in the regular season 2020 game,
Right.
The first quarter, actually.
Yeah, I mean, yes. But again, no Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there you go. So
Yeah.
I think if they get those offensive pieces back, I think it's going to be definitely a closer contest there. And speaking about closeness, nowadays they're building homes so close together.
Gosh.
They're building homes so close together. It feels like you're on top of each other, especially with your Lanai and your pool. Kind of like both of us in this press box. Your Lanais are crowded and people can kind of see. And so the best way to really, add some privacy to that is with Florida Lanai Curtains.
Yeah, Florida Lanai Curtains, simple and affordable outdoor comfort and security. You can just enjoy yourself outside more. You don't have to worry about your neighbors, being a little nosy and kind of trying to see what's going on and being all up in your business. Florida Lanai Curtains will give you privacy. They'll give you shade. I think, after some of the calls tonight and some of the ways that this fan base has felt about Byron Leftwich, he might want some privacy at his home. He might want some a way to shade himself away from everyone right now. But Florida Lanai Curtains, great sponsor of ours. They provide free estimates. Visit LanaiCurtains.com. Hassle-free online quotes. 813-337-2511. We love Florida Lanai Curtains.
Yeah, and as you guys know, anyone that we have on as a sponsor, we're either one of us at the very least, is a user of their product. And Scott has him in his home, says nothing but great things about it. My neighbor actually has them. Yeah, one of the sale ones and one on the wall. Not blocking me because we're good neighbors, but we got some creeps in the neighborhood. So definitely check out Florida Lanai Curtains for any of your Florida curtain needs, guys. We're gonna wrap up this show here. We want to thank you obviously for coming in here and talking and hanging out with us for the super chats for sure. I think the biggest takeaway for me is this defense is damn good.
Yeah.
This defense is damn good. And the offense will come around. I'm not worried about it. As you said earlier, I don't think this is a team where you need to score 30 points a game for them to win. I think you can get away with 20 points. I think you can get away with 21 points, 24 points, and still get victories because of the way this defense is playing. And I'm not even going to say unless whatever, because I'm not going to speak it into existence.
Everybody knows what you're talking about.
I don't see it dropping off anytime soon. I see it actually improving and getting better once they have more time to communicate and get into a rhythm and swing of things and look at what they've done wrong, look at it on tape, and correct it. And I think we've already started seeing that a little bit. I'd like to see it more with the run game. Teams have started a little. They've gotten some decent runs against them early on before settling down and pretty much making it non-existent in the second, third, and fourth quarters. But,
it's almost like it feels a little bit like as much as it improved as their pass defense has been, it's almost traded a little bit as far as their run defense isn't by any stretch bad. It's just, it's not number one, number two in the league like we've seen the last couple of years. So it's a little bit of an adjustment where you're like, man, they gave up 67 yards or something like that on the ground.
It was not
one of those
a
things
lot.
where like early on, Green Bay was getting some runs, but
67,
overall, I mean, they're just playing really well as a defense on the whole. So nothing you can take away from the defense's performance where you're going to be upset.
No, not at all, not at all. And I look at next week's opponent with the Chiefs. I don't see I'm not scared. I'm certainly not scared of Ronald Jones with his 0 for 0 for 0 stat line on the year. And I'm not really scared of Clyde Edwards-Helaire either. I think they can really shut him down. I don't see a way that he's going to tear through this Bucs defense. So, you can kind of make them one-dimensional like they did Rodgers, but they've got and it worked. I mean, 2 touchdowns. That's it for Aaron Rodgers, MVP last year.
Yeah, I mean, can't really ask for much more.
No. So, with that being said, guys, we're going to close it out. I want to thank y'all for being here. As always, we're live at Raymond James Stadium. We're in one of the coaches' suites. It's actually pretty cool. I don't know what they do in here, but
no, I don't think they have meltdowns quite like from the Bills today.
The Bills. Yes,
he was going a little crazy. Yeah,
throwing his stuff around. But guys, like I said, I want to thank y'all for tuning in to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast, post-game edition. Not the outcome we want, not the outcome we were looking for. If you're a Bucs fan, but you know what? I think there's a lot to take away from this, a lot to improve on, and a lot, as Brady says usually, sometimes you learn more from a loss than you do from a win. And I think this is a great teaching moment for some of the things they need to improve on. So with that being said, we'll be back tomorrow. Scott and Matt will be back at it. Again, remember our podcast change, depending on the hurricane, is going to be changing up this week too, to a Monday Tuesday, Thursday. That doesn't mean touchback Tuesdays are gone. I've got a very special guest here. We're rolling through. I'll give you a hint. We're rolling through the secondary. and all these guys have had some really big games so far. So that will still be out. It could be on a Tuesday. It might be touchback Tuesdays on a Wednesday. I don't know. We'll play it by ear. We've got a hurricane coming, guys. Get your water, get your bread, get your TP because it's coming up fast and furious. We'll see how the cone changes.
Yeah.
But that being said, for Bailey Adams, for myself, JC Allen, we're out of here. Thanks again for watching the Pewter Report podcast. Out.